Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. So we have some big updates this morning about Evergrande. That's that Chinese property development company that is in danger of collapse, potential contagion across the Chinese economy. Some people are calling it potentially a Lehman Brothers moment for China. Indications this morning that in spite of all expectations, the Chinese government may not actually bail them out. So we're going to talk about what's going on there. Some interesting updates on everyone's favorite ex-president. Of course, I'm talking about George W. Bush, joining up with Liz Cheney, getting the whole band back together. Saagar, you love to see it. One thing you do actually love to see is he got yelled at by a war veteran for his many crimes. So that was very satisfying. We'll show you that. Interesting moment with Bill Gates getting asked about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not going to say anything more. We'll show it to you and talk about that. Also, The View ladies melting down over Monica Lewinsky reviving some great old debates from 1999. We also very excited about guests we have on today. Ben Schreckinger, he wrote a book about the Biden family, tracking Joe's career, talking about some of the family corruption. He also broke, you guys might have seen this, he broke the story that, oh, lo and behold, at least some of those emails on Hunter's laptop were actually legitimate.
Yeah, he tracked down the people who were the recipients of those emails, specifically the ones about Joe Biden possibly getting a little bit of kickback. And he was like, yeah, it's totally legit.
I'm sure you're totally shocked to find out that the Hunter laptop was actually a real thing. But we wanted to start with a big old mess here in Washington and the most consequential game of chicken that anyone has ever seen between progressives and corporatists on what exactly is going to happen with this reconciliation bill. And the first thing I want to say is because the way they decided to do this is so complex, it's so mired in like procedure and the parliamentarian and reconciliation process and all of this nonsense, I understand it's really easy for eyes to glaze over, but I want you to know that the potential implications here are absolutely massive. This is the Biden agenda. Okay, if nothing happens on reconciliation, that's it for his presidency. That means that there is no changing the trajectory for working class people. There's no changing the trajectory for climate change. All of union rights, all of these things that have been proposed to be included in this package, that's it. It's done. It's over. So the entire Biden presidency is basically at stake right now in this moment.
That's right.
Right now in this moment. So on one side, you have the progressives. Their position has always been, look, these two pieces, the bipartisan infrastructure proposal, which we think kind of sucks and don't really want to vote for, we will only vote for that if it's tied to the reconciliation bill. The original deal was that the corporatists were on the opposite side. Okay, fine, we'll vote for the reconciliation piece if we get our infrastructure deal. In recent weeks, they've tried to tear those things apart so that they only get their stupid bipartisan infrastructure deal and that the reconciliation bill effectively gets tanked. So the question has been, number one, are progressives going to hold strong? Are they actually going to stick to their position now that there's starting to be some pressure on them and the media is starting to turn on them? We're going to show you that in a moment. And number two, are the corporatists going to stick to their position? Are they actually going to let both bills fail, both their infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill, and effectively tank the entire Biden presidency? So far, neither side is blinking. Let me show you first the chair of the House Congressional Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal, talking about their position.
How many members are there of the House Democratic Progressive Caucus?
There are 96 members, and over half are absolutely committed to making sure we deliver both bills at the same time.
So 48 Democrats will vote against the House infrastructure bill if it does not come with the budget reconciliation package. Is that right?
More than half of our members will vote for both bills. And this was the deal, Jake, that came out of the Senate when progressive senators passed the bipartisan bill in the Senate. It was on the specific understanding and commitment that both bills would move together. And so now we want to make sure that both bills are moving together, and we're going to hold to that commitment. And so, yes, half our members, more than half our members, will not move the bipartisan bill without the reconciliation bill being passed.
And that bipartisan infrastructure bill is supposed to come up for a vote on Monday. So
we'll
this
see.
is all coming to a head very, very quickly. But what she says there that is crucial is, look, we got 90 plus members of the House Progressive Caucus, and at least half of them, so 40 to 50 members, are not going to vote for the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill will fail if we don't have it tied together with the reconciliation bill. So far the progressives hanging in there tough, being very clear about their position, at least with regards to that tactic. What they haven't been clear about is what they would accept on a scaled down reconciliation bill, which is where things may end up landing. On the other side, you have Josh Gottheimer and the corporate Democrats. They're the ones who only want the infrastructure bill. They don't want the reconciliation bill whatsoever. They're saying that, listen, we're not going to vote for this reconciliation bill, especially if we don't get our infrastructure package, which we, again, are supposed to vote on Monday. Let's take a listen to what Josh Gottheimer has to say.
Well, first, the vote on infrastructure, of course, is out of the Senate sitting waiting for our vote. So we should all get behind that on Monday. And then we're going to, of course, keep working so hard as we have been on the reconciliation bill. There's so many things in there that are important, from climate to reinstating the state and local tax deduction, which matters a lot to Jersey, where I'm from, to get taxes down for our families. There's no reason why this can't get done. And I'm really optimistic that it will. But it makes no sense to actually, these are two separate bills. They stand on their own. Yeah. It makes no sense to vote against an infrastructure bill that's got 2 million jobs a year with it to help hardworking men and women of labor. It makes just no sense to me. So we're going to get that done. It's a key part of the president's agenda. And I know that every Democrat will ultimately be there at the end of the day.
So effectively what happened here is corporate Democrats have sort of blown up the truce in the deal that they had. They want the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which is very business friendly. They don't really want reconciliation, even though he says, oh, sure, there's great stuff in it. Clearly their tactics are meant to kill the entire reconciliation package. The last thing that I'll show you, and then we can discuss, is, of course, whose side is the media going to take?
Oh, they're already going.
They're starting to take the knives out to go after progressives and act like they're the ones that are standing in the way of any sort of progress here. Let's take a listen to Kate Baldwin, who is sort of representative of this line of thinking from CNN, challenging House Budget Chairman John Yarmuth, who, by the way, is siding with the progressives in terms of tying these two bills together, which was the original deal. Let's take a listen to that.
It makes no sense to vote against an infrastructure bill that does so much and has so much bipartisan support. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't vote against it.
This is why this makes me feel. This is why I feel crazy, because this is why people are right to feel crazy watching how this is going on in Capitol Hill right now. You agree, but we don't agree.
No, I agree that I would vote for that, and that Josh is right. This is a bill worth passing, and we ought to pass it.
And what is kind of cut off in that clip is he does, in fact, side with the progressive and want the two things together. But you can see the way that the media is taking the side of the corporate Democrats, as they always do, Saagar.
You know, it's really, watching this, it is stunning on a couple of levels. Number one, of course, the media is coming in. They have a bias where anything getting done is better than nothing, even if that anything is bad.
Especially if it's got the word bipartisan attached to it. They just like swoon instantly.
It's not even true that it's bipartisan this time, because a lot of House Republicans aren't even going to vote for it.
They're whipping against it.
Exactly. They don't want to give the Biden administration a win. I think there'll probably be about 10 or something defections, but that's not necessarily enough in order to pass the bill. Just to update everybody fully on the news. So let's put this up there on the screen from Jake Sherman. So each of the different factions actually met with the president, or at least at the White House. I think the president did talk with some of them. Gottheimer, Murphy, that's kind of the moderate crew, quote unquote. The Progressive Caucus, Jayapal, Mark Pocan, Jim McGovern, Barbara Lee, they met there also at the White House. Many senators were over there too. I do have to say, on a macro level, as the Biden agenda is crumbling, where the hell is Joe Biden himself? He has not done anything. I was telling you that he had this bizarre moment in the Oval Office where Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, was like, let's take questions. And he was taking questions from the British press while the American press was shouted down by these White House lackeys. And our president in our Oval Office is not taking questions about this bill.
It's awkward.
That's insane.
Which is his key,
his literal legacy.
Everything.
You know, it could turn out here, Krystal, that that Obama at least got, some fake Obamacare thing at the end.
It was better than nothing.
It's very likely that there's nothing that comes out here at all. Now, David Sirota, seems to think that after this whole thing is killed, there'll be some other semi-reconciliation bill. I mean, sure, that's possible, but everything is coming to head right now. We've got the debt ceiling. We've got a possible government shutdown looming here because of a continuing resolution in order to fund the government. We've got the reconciliation bill. It all comes to head on Monday. Pelosi says, quote, "We're on schedule," whatever the hell that means. It's very clear that the votes are not there. There's also clear that there's no way in hell that the actual top line numbers on the reconciliation bill itself are agreed to by Monday. I just don't see that humanly possible.
No.
All of it is crumbling. The president himself is nowhere. I mean, look, Obama, to his credit, I guess, in the middle of Obamacare negotiations was always there. I actually, was reading his book recently. I'm sorry, everyone, I had to, in order to convey exactly the mindset as professional hazard. But look, I said, he gave that special address to Congress on Obamacare where Joe Wilson shouted, "Oh, you lie," or whatever.
Yeah.
He was actually down on Capitol Hill all the time. He was deeply invested in a lot of the negotiations. Biden, by all accounts, is nowhere to be seen. I mean, sure, he'll call Sinema, he'll call Manchin, but he hasn't even been down to Capitol Hill to whip any votes. What is he doing?
That was actually during the Obama administration. Who was it that they frequently sent down to Capitol Hill to try to twist arms and work on these negotiations? It was Joe Biden.
Yes.
I mean, this is a central part of the case that he made to the American people. I'm going to be able to get things done.
I was there.
Because
I know the system.
Yeah,
right.
I know these people. I know how the institution works. I know how to do these sort of backroom deals. There's an implicit critique of Obama in there because Obama was sort of famously above getting his hands dirty in these kinds of negotiations. Joe has always been the opposite kind of politician, very hands-on, very relationship-based. And yeah, I mean, you just don't really see that happening. You don't see an affirmative case being made to the American people about any of this either. So it is quite puzzling. A little update on what did happen in those White House meetings where he did at least insert himself a little bit. Yesterday he had the conservative factions and he also had the progressive faction. So this is from Manu Raju, tweeted this out. For the progressive Democrats told Biden that September 27th date, that's Monday, for a House vote on the infrastructure bill is, quote, kind of arbitrary to us. And the president left it at and said, "Let me think it over and talk to Schumer and Speaker Pelosi and get back to you." So that's kind of where they left things with the progressives, like, let me think about it. With what Manchin said that Biden told him is, and again, take all of this with a grain of salt because everybody coming out of this room is trying to spin things in their favor. But what Manchin said is, he basically said, find a number you're comfortable with on the reconciliation bill based on the needs that we still have and how we deliver to the American people. Please just work on it. Give me a number and tell me what you can live with and what you can't. So that would seem to indicate that they're trying to push in the direction of what Sirota has been indicating and what we've sort of speculated as well, that ultimately, even if this infrastructure vote gets pulled or fails on Monday, that there's going to continue to be negotiations and they'll come to some number. Is that number going to be acceptable? Is it going to be worthwhile? Is it going to strip, remember something we've been talking about here for a long time that suddenly the mainstream media just picked up on, is that Joe Manchin heads the committee that writes all the climate change portions.
Right.
So is that going to be remotely acceptable to progressives who've said no climate, no deal? Do they continue to draw a hard line? All of these things, gigantic question mark, and still entirely possible that the whole entire thing collapses. As you said, there are two other major issues coming to a head right now as well, which is the debt ceiling. We're about to reach that sometime mid-October. And government shutdown at the end of the month if they don't pass a stopgap spending bill. John Yarmuth, who again is chair of the House Budget Committee, we have this tweet, I think, his staff says that there is no time to alter the reconciliation bill or write a standalone bill to lift the debt ceiling. Okay, what does that mean? It means that they've left themselves in a position where they have to get Republican help to lift the debt ceiling before a default in October. They could have lifted the debt ceiling through the reconciliation bill if they had put that in the original budget instructions, but they didn't. And now what he's saying is there's no time to do that. We don't have time before October 15th to go back and do new budget instructions and start this process all over again.
Because the Senate would have to vote them, then it would have to kick it over to the House, then they'd have to redo it. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole process. It takes floor time, and there just isn't enough time between now and October 15th to do this in the way that Democrats could do it on their own. How is that going to get resolved? Don't know. Their theory of the case right now is that if they put the lifting of the debt ceiling along with the stopgap budget bill that would basically allow the government to not shut down, that Republicans will be pressured and forced into helping them lift the debt ceiling. There's no indication that that is the case.
I don't think that. And I explained this the last show. Every Democratic president, and actually Republican president, Trump fell for this too. Every president goes, American people aren't going to blame me. They're going to blame Congress for screwing around. Trump made that gamble. Obama made that gamble twice. Who did it work out for, everybody? It never works out for the people in power.
Yep.
Why? Especially in this particular case, people can say, hey, you run the government. What are you doing? You have all three, you have both houses of Congress, and you have the president. If the government shuts down on your watch, they ain't going to blame Republicans, even if it is 100% their fault. It feeds into the chaos. Biden's approval rating is already tanking. The economy thing in particular is where he's already has lost the most amount of ground. You have a government shutdown that always costs billions of dollars to the economy. I have zero doubt in my mind that the Biden administration would be the one that suffered the most. Republicans have no incentive. And actually, to your point too, this again shows how much of a failure Biden is in terms of policing the actual coalitions within the Democratic Party. 11 senators, let's put this up there from, I think it's another Jake Sherman tweet, which is 11 senators have come out to back the House progressive. So it's not just like the House who's rabble-rousing here. You've got Cory Booker and Gillibrand, Hirono, Merkley, Padilla, Sanders, Warren, Brian Schatz, Tina Smith even from Minnesota, Sheldon Whitehouse, all those people in the Senate are actually backing the idea because they don't necessarily like the bipartisan infrastructure bill either. Biden has not done any real job here in trying to square the circle. And, going to Manchin and saying, give me a number you can live with. I mean, he's one senator, but here you have 11 who have an entirely other different agenda. Yeah. I'm just really struck by his complete lack of insertion into the process so far. This kind of hands-off thing. He styles himself as LBJ and FDR, and I can tell you that neither of those presidents, I think, I've got books about coming behind me, neither of those presidents did anything of the sort and were deeply and intimately involved in these negotiations. This is a big leadership failure, in my opinion, the fact that it even got to this point. And now it's so precarious, I don't see any of the option but to fail. I don't see how else it could go.
I mean, we're not geniuses here, but we said as soon as the relief bill passed and they didn't put some of these things into it at the time when there was real momentum and there was this real push and there was a lot of pressure on senators to deliver after they promised these checks and all this stuff. When he didn't do that then, at that point, we both said this could be it for him.
That's what I said. I mean, political capital.
Listen, I mean, look at the history of presidents, which I know Joe Biden has done. He's wanted to be president for like 87 years, okay? So he's studied the history of how these administrations unfold. He participated for 8 years as vice president. Most everything happens in the first 100 days. What doesn't happen in the first 100 days is not likely to get done. So gigantic mistake number one is not trying to make some of these big, permanent, lasting changes, not just the little stopgap relief stuff that's already come and gone, to do that in the first 100 days. The fact that that didn't happen, gigantic miss, gigantic failure. Then this decision to split these two things apart. And because this bipartisanship fetish and obsession in Washington that has thoroughly rotted Joe Biden's brain and the brain of like 99% of the press corps here, led to them splitting these two pieces apart. And now it's creating a giant mess because an entirely predictable thing said. At first, the corporatists were like, yeah, sure, we'll go along with that. And then they sensed a moment to get the upper hand and they've taken it. So they're putting into peril his entire agenda. And yes, that's their fault, but it's also his fault because the entire strategy, the tactical decisions that were made led to exactly this moment that we're at. Also, they've known that this government shutdown was coming. Also, they've known the debt ceiling was coming. Also, they've known the Republicans are assholes and aren't going to help them lift the debt ceiling. Like, this is breaking news to you somehow.
Were you alive in 2010?
Right, yeah. Or anytime. Like, what? You thought Mitch McConnell was going to help you with your little problem here? Of course he's not. Of course he's not. So they've created a gigantic mess for themselves, and it is entirely unclear how any of this gets resolved. But I can tell you, the idea of a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill or anything close to that getting through, dead.
I remember you saying that actually almost immediately after the CARES Act. You're like, what are you doing? You're like, this is the time. And and I remember, I think I was looking at the schedule whenever they're like, well, nothing's going to pass till October. I was like, that's in 4 months. Yeah, like, wait.
You're like, we're not going to be able to get to it.
Yeah, I was like, I know how to read a calendar. That just means you all want to go on vacation, which is what happened. Oh, and then they were like, their justification was, well, negotiations will happen during vacation. How did that work out?
How'd that work out?
Amazing.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.